At this point, you may be asking, do I really need coaching? I mean, I'm functioning because on paper, things are fine. You're working, you're providing, you're handling responsibility. You're not falling apart. So why would you need help? That question deserves a serious answer, not a pitch. First, let's name something very clearly. This question doesn't come from avoidance. It comes from competence. High-functioning men are used to figuring things out. You're used to pushing through. You're used to solving problems internally, being the one others rely on. So when someone suggests support, the instinct isn't fear, it's just confusion. If I'm not broken, what's the problem? Which is a completely fair question. Functioning is not the same as thriving, though. Here's the distinction most men were never taught. Functioning means you can keep going. You can manage complexity. You can carry weight. But thriving means your effort is directional. Your decisions feel clean. Your presence feels intact. Your life feels coherent. Most high-functioning men aren't failing. They're operating below their actual capacity for clarity. Not because they're weak, but because they've normalized overload. But here's the paradox. The more capable you are, the longer you can tolerate misalignment. You don't crash. You adapt. You compensate. You simplify emotionally. You reduce expectation. And because nothing breaks, you assume nothing's wrong. But over time, the cost shows up quietly. With inner joy, with narrow decisions, with reduced presence, with leadership that preserves instead of guides. That's not failure. That's capacity being underused. Most men don't say this arrogantly. They say it responsibly because you've handled everything else. But here's the part that matters. The skill that made you effective, self-reliance, is the same skill that hides internal interference. You don't notice the noise because you're still moving. You don't notice misalignment because you're still producing. Functioning masks friction. Let's correct a misconception here. Coaching is not for people who can't cope. It's for people who can and want to do it with clarity instead of strain. This work isn't about being told what to do. It's about restoring internal order, removing interference, sharpening your decision-making, protecting your capacity. Think of it less like help and more like calibration. At a certain level of competence, the problem isn't knowledge, it's perspective. When you're inside the system, you normalize pressure. You explain away discomfort. You rationalize misalignment, not because you're dishonest, but because proximity distorts clarity. Even the most capable systems need external reference points, not because they're failing, but because precision matters at higher levels. There's an ancient assumption underneath this. Strength was never meant to be solitary. Wisdom was never meant to be self-contained. Even the strongest leaders sought counsel. They sought withdrawal. They sought reflection, correction. Not because they were weak, but because clarity requires distance. We aren't made to be self-sufficient all the time. We function best when things are ordered. We share our burdens, we surround ourselves with wise counsel, and move forward wisely. That's what this work provides. Isn't this just for people in crisis? No. Crisis forces clarity. Functioning delays it. Most men who benefit from this work aren't in trouble necessarily. They're just tired of carrying things alone, quietly, indefinitely. They don't want less responsibility. They want to carry it without friction. When men ask, do I really need coaching if I'm functioning? What they're often really asking is it okay to want more clarity even if nothing is technically wrong? And the answer to that is absolutely yes, because wanting clarity isn't indulgence. It's good stewardship. Here's what changes when high-functioning men restore clarity. The decisions feel lighter. Their leadership becomes directional again. Their presence returns. Relationships feel less draining. Spiritual tension deepens. Effort stops feeling like self-punishment. Not because life gets easier, but because it gets ordered. You don't need coaching the way you need oxygen. You may not be suffocating. You may not be in crisis. You may not be falling apart. You're functioning. But you choose coaching the way you choose alignment. Not because something is broken, but because something feels off. Refinement isn't about being rescued. It's about reducing friction where competence already exists. It's the difference between working hard and working clean, carrying responsibility and carrying it well, making decisions and trusting them. This isn't about being told what to do. It's about clearing the interference that makes capable people second guess themselves. Refinement belongs to people who already know how to endure, but don't want endurance to be the whole story. It's for people who can push through, who can figure things out, who can hold complexity, and are honest enough to admit that carrying everything alone is just inefficient. Refinement doesn't replace strength. It actually protects it. It sharpens judgment. It preserves energy. It restores direction. And that's why this kind of work is almost never chosen by people who are collapsing. It's chosen by people who are capable, who want to stay that way without slowly burning down from the inside. So if you're functioning, you're not behind. But if you're functioning without clarity, you're carrying more friction than you need to. The question isn't, do I need coaching? The question is, what would my life look like if I didn't have to manage everything alone? If that question sticks with you, the next step isn't commitment. It's a conversation. Book a call. Not because something is wrong, but not because something is wrong, but because something could be clear. See you in the next one.